3 years after my son passed away, my husband left me for my daughter-in-law. I wish I could say I was prepared for that kind of betrayal, but nothing could have braced me for what came next. My name is Linda Harper. I'm 64, and I live in Ohio. I lost my only son, Michael, in what everyone thought was a tragic accident. Those first months, and really those first 3 years, were a blur of grief, sleepless nights, and the quiet ache that never seems to fade. I kept his room exactly as it had been: the trophies, the old baseball glove, the little notes he left around his desk. Every item was a memory, and I couldn't bear to part with any of it. That afternoon, I was in his room again, rearranging some of his things for the umpteenth time when I heard laughter and whispers coming from the kitchen downstairs. At first I froze, hoping it was just my imagination, but the voices were unmistakable. James, my husband of 40 years, and Rachel, my daughter-in-law, were talking. Their tone was light, almost conspiratorial, and there was a giggle, Rachel's unmistakable, breathy laugh that made my heart stop. I pressed myself against the doorframe, trying to steady my racing pulse. Confusion, disbelief, and an icy dread settled over me all at once. I had thought Rachel's frequent visits were harmless, maybe even necessary. She was, after all, still grieving Michael. But this was something else, something darker. My hands tightened on the edge of Michael's desk as the whispers became clearer. They weren't just talking about me, about the divorce, or about their new life. They were discussing Michael, about him specifically. Every instinct in me screamed that something was terribly wrong. The words suspicious and plan floated up to me, and my stomach twisted. The idea that they could be plotting anything at all in the house where my son had lived, where his memory still lingered in every corner, was almost too much to bear. I realized in that instant that this was no ordinary betrayal. This wasn't just an affair or a broken marriage. Something horrifying had been set into motion, something that could explain the questions I'd never dared to ask about Michael's accident. And I knew right then that my life and the life of anyone who had loved Michael would never be the same. I had to find out the truth, and I had to do it quietly. After that terrifying afternoon, I realized I couldn't trust what I heard alone. I needed proof, something undeniable. Weeks before, after a couple of break-ins that left me feeling vulnerable in my own home, I had installed a security system, cameras, and audio recorders in every main room, all motion activated and connected to a central panel. At the time, I thought it was just for safety, a way to make sure my home was secure. I never imagined that those devices would become the very thing that would save me from the unimaginable. I went through the recordings carefully, starting with the days and months leading up to that afternoon. It didn't take long before I found conversations that made my blood run cold. James and Rachel had been planning something for months, something deliberate, calculated, and horrifying. I heard them talking about Michael's old car, his routines, even the timing of his outings. One day in particular made my heart nearly stop. They spoke about the brake lines, about cutting them in a way that would look like an accident. They had studied his habits, his schedule, and his trust in his family, and they had used all of it against him. It wasn't just the mechanics of the plan that stunned me, it was the casual, almost gleeful tone they took. They laughed over strategies, whispered about manipulating grief and appearances, and plotted how to secure Michael's life insurance and control assets after his death. And then came a detail that made me feel my knees weaken. Rachel might have been pregnant with James's child. That revelation made everything click. The affair wasn't just about lust or attention, it was about control, secrecy, and covering up a new life that would have been evidence of betrayal. Their motives weren't just selfish, they were lethal. I spent hours documenting everything, taking notes and cross-referencing dates and conversations. Each piece of evidence, each whispered plan, strengthened the horrifying picture forming in my mind. I didn't call the police immediately, not yet. I needed the full story. I needed to understand the depth of their deception. I had to know exactly what they had done, how far they were willing to go, and what it would take to bring the truth to light. every recording made my chest tighten, with a mixture of fear and outrage. How could two people I once trusted so deeply betray me and my family in such a cold, calculated way? And yet, even in my horror, I felt a small spark of determination. I would uncover everything. I would gather every scrap of evidence, every word, every whisper, until the story of what happened to Michael was undeniable. As I pieced it all together, a chilling sense of clarity settled over me. This wasn't just about grief or heartbreak, it was about premeditation, manipulation, and a plan that could have destroyed everything I held dear. And now with every recording, I could feel the weight of what I needed to do. I had to be patient, clever, and relentless. Michael deserved that much, and if I was careful, I could ensure that justice was finally served. By the time I had reviewed and documented every recording, I knew I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. I had to act strategically. So I returned to my role as if nothing had changed, caring, supportive, the grieving widow. I poured coffee for James every morning, asked Rachel how she was doing, and even helped with little things around the house, like errands and meals. All the while, every word they spoke, every glance was being carefully noted in my mind. I wasn't just listening, I was baiting them, letting their own arrogance and sense of invincibility work against them. The moment I decided to confront them, I did it subtly. I invited them over for a Sunday dinner, the kind we used to share when Michael was still with us. Rachel came first, bringing her little daughter Emma, whose bright innocence was a bittersweet reminder of what had been stolen from us. I let her play in the living room, chatting with Emma casually, while I prepared the table, keeping my calm as though everything was normal. James arrived shortly after, smiling and hugging me as if nothing had happened, playing the perfect grieving husband and father. Dinner passed in a quiet, almost serene atmosphere. Then when dessert was served, Michael's favorite chocolate cake, I calmly reached for the digital recorder I had prepared and pressed play. The room filled with their own voices from months of plotting, the cold, calculating discussions of Michael's death, the meticulous planning, the betrayal, the lies. I watched as recognition spread across their faces, their composure cracking into disbelief and horror. James' jaw tightened. Rachel went pale, and for a brief suspended moment, the entire house seemed to hold its breath. I picked up my phone and called the police, immediately explaining the situation and detailing the evidence I had amassed, 23 recordings meticulously organized and cataloged, along with the physical proof from Michael's car that had been stored since the accident. I could hear James moving toward me, but I held the phone just out of reach, my voice steady, firm. Within half an hour, officers arrived, confirming that the case would be reopened as a homicide investigation. Sitting in my kitchen, watching the officers take statements and collect the evidence, a strange sense of relief washed over me. Justice, it seemed, was finally within reach. But more than that, I felt a surge of empowerment. My patient's careful planning and vigilance had protected the innocent and brought the guilty to light. I realized that by trusting my instincts and refusing to act impulsively, I had preserved the integrity of the case and ensured that Michael's story would finally be heard. It was a tense, almost cinematic moment, the calm, normal exterior masking the storm beneath, and the eventual reveal that left the perpetrators stunned and helpless. And in that, I felt the first flicker of hope since Michael's death, that even in the darkest circumstances, the truth could be uncovered, the innocent protected, and justice served. The trial began 3 months after the arrests, and I knew every detail I had painstakingly collected would finally be tested in front of the law. Rachel pled guilty, agreeing to testify against James in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her confession was chilling yet necessary, as it laid bare the depth of their betrayal. She spoke of their affair, the planning, and her fear of Michael discovering the truth. I listened quietly, my heart heavy, but my resolve unwavering. This was the moment when justice began to take shape. James' defense was relentless. He claimed that he had never seriously planned anything, that everything Rachel said was her own delusion, a projection of paranoia fueled by grief. He argued that he had only played along to soothe her fears, never imagining she would take things seriously. For a moment, some in the courtroom seemed to entertain the possibility, but then the recordings came forward. 23 conversations meticulously documented over months, all corroborated by timestamps and physical evidence from Michael's car. Every lie, every attempt to manipulate, unraveled in real time. The defense could no longer deny the damning evidence Linda had gathered. Just when I thought the case had revealed its darkest secrets, a new layer emerged. During a review of the evidence, I discovered something Rachel had disclosed in private sessions. She had been pregnant with James' child. The revelation hit me like a punch to the chest. Michael, my son, had uncovered her secret, confronted her with questions about the timing, and begun piecing together the truth. But it was too late. He was gone, and the motive crystallized. James and Rachel had acted not only to cover their affair, but to prevent Michael from discovering that the child wasn't his. I worked closely with the court to ensure that this detail was properly documented. A child psychologist interviewed Emma, confirming that her recollections and play-acted scenarios mirrored real events she had witnessed, validating Rachel's account without coercion or fabrication. It was critical that the court understood the full scope of the deception and premeditation. Emma's innocence contrasted sharply with the calculated cruelty of the adults around her, making the need for justice all the more urgent. The outcome was decisive. James received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Rachel was sentenced to 25 years with the possibility of early release contingent upon her full cooperation and truthful testimony. Watching the verdicts being read, I felt a mix of relief, sorrow, and vindication. The people who had caused so much pain were finally held accountable, yet nothing could bring back my son or restore the years of grief that followed his loss. Throughout the trial, I remained present in the courtroom, often sitting quietly as I observed James and Rachel as officers and lawyers navigated the complexities of the case, and as Emma, safely cared for by her grandmother, remained shielded from the trauma. I felt a strange combination of empowerment and exhaustion. Empowerment because patience, vigilance, and intelligence had guided the truth into the light, and exhaustion from the emotional toll of reliving every detail of Michael's final months. Even as justice was served, the lessons were clear patience, meticulous planning, and courage can protect the innocent and expose the guilty. For me, it wasn't just about punishment. It was about ensuring that Michael's story, his bravery, and his love for his family were recognized. And in seeing the court acknowledge the full truth, I felt a cautious sense of hope that even in the aftermath of unimaginable betrayal, integrity and justice could prevail. Life after the trial was a mix of relief, sorrow, and purpose. While justice had finally been served, the absence of Michael still lingered like a shadow over every corner of my life. His laughter, his energy, the way he cared for everyone around him, all gone, leaving a silence that could never be filled. Yet amidst that grief, I found focus in caring for Emma, my granddaughter. She had endured a loss no child should ever face, and it became my mission to provide her with love, security, and a sense of normalcy. We baked cookies, read bedtime stories, and shared moments of laughter that felt precious against the backdrop of what had been stolen from her. I explained in ways she could understand that some adults make choices that hurt others, and that her father had been a kind and brave man who loved her deeply. In addition, I established the Michael Harper Foundation, dedicated to supporting children who have lost parents under tragic circumstances. Channeling grief into this work gave my life renewed meaning. Each child we helped reminded me that even in the darkest times, hope could be created from pain. The foundation allowed me to honor Michael's memory and to ensure that other children would have the support and guidance needed to navigate loss and trauma. Watching Emma grow up surrounded by care while helping other children heal became a source of strength I hadn't anticipated. Reflecting on the events that brought us here, I realized some key lessons worth sharing. First, trust your instincts. From the moment I sensed something was wrong, I followed my intuition, even when it was uncomfortable and difficult. Pursuing the truth, no matter how long it took, was the only path to justice. Second, patience and intelligence are crucial. I did not act impulsively. I observed, documented, and prepared. That diligence ensured that when the time came, the truth could not be denied, and the guilty were held accountable. Third, protect the innocent above all else. Emma's well-being guided every decision I made, allowing her to be shielded from trauma, while understanding the truth in a way that was appropriate for her age. Finally, I came to appreciate the extraordinary strength of women, particularly those of us in midlife and beyond. Experience, wisdom, and resilience empower us to navigate impossible situations with clarity and courage. My story, filled with heartbreak and betrayal, also became a testament to the power of women to stand firm, act decisively, and create change in the most challenging circumstances. Even in the face of unimaginable adversity, we can protect what is precious, fight for justice, and foster hope. Today, I continue to honor Michael's memory through my work with Emma and the Foundation. While some wounds will never fully heal, the experience has shown me that empowerment, patience, and courage can coexist with grief. This story is a reminder that no matter how difficult life becomes or how deep betrayal cuts, truth and justice are always worth pursuing. If this story inspired you, I hope you will like, share, and comment below with your own experiences. And don't forget to subscribe to Real Her Stories for more heartfelt, courageous stories of women who have faced adversity, stood up for themselves, and found strength even in the most challenging moments.